Today we're crossing a border, but not to highlight what divides us. Instead, we're taking a closer look at what connects communities on both sides of the 49th parallel. Municipalities in Canada and the United States share more than geography. From managing growth and infrastructure to responding to economic uncertainty and housing pressures, local governments are often on the front lines of the same challenges. Yet the systems they operate within, their powers, their funding models, and their relationships with senior levels of government can often quite look differently. So, what does that mean in practice? Where are cities facing similar pressures? And where do their paths diverge? And perhaps most importantly, what can we learn from each other? To help us explore these questions and a few more, we are joined by two leaders of communities of comparable sizes, each bringing a unique cross-border perspective to this show. From the uniquely positioned border city of Lloydminster, straddling Saskatchewan and Alberta in Canada, we welcome Mayor Gerald Albers. And from the city of Bozeman, Montana, a rapidly growing city in America's West, we are pleased to be joined by Mayor Joey Morrison. Together, we'll discuss the shared challenges municipalities are navigating today, the opportunities ahead, and how local leadership continues to shape the future of communities on both sides of the border. This is Municipal Affairs, and it starts after this quick message.
You stepped up to serve your community. Now take your leadership to the next level. Introducing GEMS, Governance Essentials for the Municipal Sector, a practical, Saskatchewan-based training program designed for council members and those who support them. Whether newly elected or a seasoned leader, GEMS helps sharpen the skills that matter most: decision-making, accountability, financial stewardship, infrastructure oversight, and navigating the complex realities of municipal governance. This isn't your typical classroom. GEMS is flexible, online, and built for busy people. You don't need a university degree, just a commitment to good governance. For some, it's been years since taking a course. That's okay. GEMS is designed to build confidence and knowledge. There is a short assessment, but it's there to reinforce your learning, not to trip you up. If cost is a concern, talk to your administrator, as there may be grants available to offset some of the costs. Because when local leaders grow, entire communities benefit. GEMS, because good governance isn't just important, it's essential.
From the smallest villages to the largest cities, every day your urban municipality supports you. The water that travels from tap to sewer, the emergency services that keep you safe, the parks, libraries, and rinks that you enjoy. Our cities, towns, villages, resort villages, and northern municipalities are urban hubs bringing people together. We are urban. Celebrate your municipality as part of the urban family.
Mayor Morrison, Mayor Albers, thank you so much for sitting down with us and talking about not what divides us, but what brings us together as municipal leaders on both sides of the 49th parallel. To start, I want to start with Mayor Morrison, if you don't mind. How would you describe your municipalities in terms of growth, priorities, and the current pressures the city of Bozeman is facing, Mayor?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Really excited for this conversation. It is impossible to talk about Bozeman without talking about the place and the environment that it sits in. We have mountains, we have rivers, we have some global destinations in our area. We're close to Yellowstone National Park. There's a strong ethos of service, of intellectualism, of self-betterment that comes from our university, as we're a university town. And of course, all of those amenities bring a lot of people here. Any place that's getting visited will eventually have folks that visit and say, maybe I'm going to stick around. And that's certainly no different for us. Consequently, we've had an explosion of growth since the start of the pandemic that has resulted in, at times, 3, 4, 5, 6% rates of growth. And that has put a huge pressure on our housing supply. And so that is chief among us, the greatest pressure that is affecting our residents. It is the pressure that pushes back on being able to bring talent into this community for businesses, for different industries, for our school district that's trying to attract young families that want to settle down here. They are coming and they're saying, no, thanks, I'm going to go somewhere else. Or thanks, I'll come, but I'm not going to raise a child in this community. And so consequently, there is no part where, even when we're talking about childcare costs, transportation costs, grocery costs, they're still dwarfed by the cost of housing.
Mayor Albers, I know you and I've chatted a few times when Mayor Morrison was talking about housing. I'm flashed back to all the conversations we've had, and many mayors across Saskatchewan and Alberta have had about housing. So, for you, if you don't mind, the same original question, how would you describe your municipalities in terms of growth, priorities, and current pressures?
Well, we're starting to see growth that we haven't seen for a number of years, and partly due to our economy. And as Mayor Morrison talked about, he's almost a tourist town, is what I'd see them fitting that. But having the university, which we have a college, and that helps a bit, but nothing in comparison to the university. The opportunity that we're seeing is we're starting to see growth as a regional center, service center for both healthcare, business, and things like that, which is putting pressure on our housing. And certainly that we're starting to see houses built, but all of a sudden we're playing catch up because we went through a period of years like a lot of other communities where we didn't see the investment in housing, either single family or multifamily. From that perspective. And, the current pressure certainly is housing. It doesn't matter if it's people looking to buy a new home, to buy an existing home, a starter home. We're seeing that challenge. And then it brings the unhoused that they're having a hard time finding a place to live as well. So I think we share those common pressures from that perspective.
I want to just pick up on the housing challenges because I think this is going to be the biggest part of the conversation we're probably going to have today is about housing. In Canada, and I'll start with Mayor Albers if you don't mind. In Canada, housing is not traditionally looked at as a municipal issue. Now, you are responsible for the infrastructure underground. Your responsibility is the roads, the sewer, the waste-wise. What role does the municipality in Lloydminster play in addressing the housing challenges, and has it evolved over the last 5 years?
Well, it's actually evolved over a longer period. We've had private developers, and the city has played in the development business from the perspective of raw land, getting service so that they could actually sell lots and ensure that there was lots available in the community. That's where we've played that role. Now, facilitating, inviting more builders, inviting developers, people to come and look at our community because we're not in that mainstay of some of the other cities in Canada. So, we do have a great local developer. The city's in the development business. We have some smaller developers that buy industrial and commercial property and build out from there, from that perspective. So we do have a role, but it's not in our bailiwick to be building houses. And that's the last thing I think we want to be in, be it multifamily or single family. But that's where the municipality, in our opinion, is responsible to ensure that we invite people in and make sure we make those connections through economic development, showing there's an opportunity here to take advantage of.
Mayor Morrison, for yourself, for the city of Bozeman, is it in the jurisdictional purview of the city to build houses, or is it the responsibility of private developers? And how do you balance that to sort of offset that unexpected growth that you've seen over the last few years?
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest questions that is playing out in our community right now, and certainly has been for really the last decade, is what is the role of local government, state government, or even federal government at trying to get permanently affordable housing off the ground and built and ready to lease up. We've certainly taken the position that because the problem is so vast and such a deep-seated issue in our community, that we do believe we have a role to play. We have a housing program, and we have housing staff that are specifically lined up to work on our housing programming, which looks like a few different things. It's mostly incentive based. The state of Montana has denied us the ability to do things like rent control or mandatory inclusionary zoning and things like that. So all of our programming is to offer bonuses or incentives to private developers that wish to use them. And there's a few reasons why we've decided, hey, we need to step into this. Mostly it's that it's clear that the private sector is not able to build or willing to build at the level that we need for our community, for folks that are making 60, 50, 40% of area median income, which are the wages of our teachers, the wages of nurses, that we know that we have contribute a value to our community that we need to keep here. And so this, instead of deciding, hey, we're just going to let the private sector continue to really not meaningfully address this issue, they're of course an important partner of this in a part, but that under 60% AMI for rent and sub 120 AMI for purchase is seemingly impossible with the current funding and financing landscape between labor and lumber and lending institutions. So we're deciding, hey, there's a public good to keeping these type of folks in this community. It makes us safer and more prosperous. We're going to step up to the plate and try to find creative mechanisms to finance that housing or to build on top of city-owned land.
So it brings, I want to clarify just for my sake, just make sure I understand where you're coming from. You're not in the role of building houses in Bozeman, but you are in the role of incentivizing building of housing in your community through grants through private developers, right?
Correct. Yeah, we're not hiring general contractors or anything like that, but we are looking at land that we have purchased in the last decade and saying maybe this is something that we should permanently deed restrict, like a community housing trust that has an equity cap on the future residents and things like that keeps paying it back. Because we are recognizing that the private sector and the public sector, we can take different risks. We measure success differently. A private developer needs a return on that investment. The public sector, we just need the return for us can be keeping teachers and nurses in the community.
For yourself, Mayor Albers, I hear what Mayor Morrison's saying about incentivizing potential developers, and that's what municipalities do. And I'm hearing other municipalities across Alberta and Saskatchewan say the exact same thing about how they're trying to get more developers into their community. You talk about your local developers within Lloydminster. How do you attract the growth that you need while you're trying to understand the demands of building a house is not just a overnight solution. It is a 2 to 3 year, 4 year solution to find 10, 15 developers to build 100 to 200 houses that you might need in your community.
Yeah, it's a challenge, Chris, from that perspective. And certainly we're finding a shortage of trades. We have people that would like a house, they'd like to build in our community. Finding a builder to build the house for a stick built home is the challenge right now. We've seen a surge in what they call RTMs, or ready to move homes. So the folks roll into a yard and they work every day there, Monday through Friday. It's secured. It's their tools are there. They're working there, and they're building houses and they're being moved somewhere. Now they're not being moved into our community, but there's a great demand for homes outside urban centers, and they're being delivered somewhere from that perspective. So there's some challenges there. Working with the developers, understanding what they're looking for land is a challenge to ensure that you have zone for multifamily rather than single family. And we went through growth over a number of decades in our city, and you can see it where condos, apartments, townhouses were built, but just finding those balances, because once you start a single family development, people don't want to tend to see, they'd like to see it stay a single family development. So it is a little challenging from the planning aspect and making sure that as the developers in the city, be it the city as a developer or private developers come forward with land development, that we are actually looking at complete neighborhoods, those neighborhoods that include multifamily housing, and then maybe everything from apartments to condos to townhouses to row houses. Then you get into more single family homes, and from that perspective, and try and design that going forward, because that's the best thing you can do. It's just challenging when you're up against the wall and you don't have any property available, or that's what the demand all of a sudden shifts from single family to multifamily, as we're starting to see a little bit. But our developer is working on that right now. As a matter of fact, they've opened up a new subdivision and they're going to be doing a lot of work in that multifamily area, realizing they know that's where the need is today.
One of the big things that I hear from mayors across Canada and the CAOs that I've chatted with in the States is not around the housing pressures, it's around the sustainable growth and infrastructure challenges that we're currently facing within our two countries. Starting with Mayor Albers, if you don't mind, infrastructure funding is often cited as a major pressure. How does the city of Lloydminster manage aging or expanding infrastructure while not doing it on the backs of the people who are currently there? Because that's the age-old question. How does growth pay for itself? You don't want to pay for it by hurting the people who are currently there. So how does Lloydminster sort of balance that?
Well, we have that offsite levies. So as new properties are developed, there is an offsite levy that's reviewed every 5 years approximately. It's also subject to as master plans come forward and talk about what's needed in the future for growth. Growth pays for growth in an ideal world, and that's what we're trying to strive for. And I think other municipalities are trying to do that. It is challenging because then you have a water treatment plant. You're upgrading the water treatment plant, but you're also expanding the water treatment plant. The upgrade is shared by everybody. The expansion falls to offsite levies, is the best way to describe it. So working with what resources we have, it's challenging. We've went through two major capital projects, both required, one by law, wastewater treatment plant did get some funding, but that's a challenge as talking to other mayors and as you have, Chris, it's a lottery. If you're lucky if you win and your project gets approved and you're able to stay within budget and deliver the project. Yeah, otherwise it is really challenging, and there's multiple communities as economic growth comes who's paying for that, and we're not we wait for a federal program that hopefully will be a third cost share between municipalities, provincial and federal. We don't have that today, so there's municipalities that are struggling. We're trying to keep up by replacing the infrastructure on a small basis downtown, as an example, where it's been there 50, 60, 70 years, and you can't go in and reline the pipes that are downtown. Yeah, they're undersized in some cases. We have storm and wastewater going in the same pipe where we should have two sets of pipes. So we're just tackling it 2 blocks at a time or 1 block at a time. That's how we're tackling the infrastructure challenge we have today.
Mayor Morrison, I saw you sort of nodding your head as Mayor Albers was talking. Is aging infrastructure challenge in the city of Bozeman? And again, with the same question I asked Mayor Albers, how does growth pay for growth, or how do you see yourself sustainably growing the city of Bozeman, not on the backs of the people who are there?
Yeah, it's one of the big challenges that especially, any city is going to be having to struggle with. Roads, pipes, etc. cost a lot of money and are really expensive and hard to replace. And consequently, in Montana, we're really restricted on how much we can charge development. So we get to levy what are called impact fees, but it's effectively, saying you're bringing something new into the community. That means more people, that means more EMS trips, that means more stormwater, wastewater, and time on the roads. And so when we levy that fee to developers, it is only expressly with the equation that it is to expand existing supply, whether that's water inventory, stormwater capacity, or roads. And so it's not sufficient to really meaningfully improve our roads in a significant way. So consequently, we have to then, look to existing residents and saying, hey, we need to bring these roads and improve the quality of these roads, or whatever the infrastructure may be. I would say I have less of a hard time of asking residents that question. We do them. We have a few different tools that we can do that. One is a special improvement district, which is small, so it's just the folks that vote on it are the residents that would benefit from it. In part because I believe in democracy and folks can vote yes or no if they want to. The other part is that we all benefit when our roads are safer. We all benefit when our aged infrastructure is brought up to our modern standard. But the real challenge that we have with that is, yes, of course, folks voting no and saying they don't want to do this. Then a disaster happens and we have to then fix it. So it's sort of this game of chicken with residents where they're saying, oh, my water main's going to break in the next couple of years. Okay, I'll bet on that. But the other piece, and I don't know how much snow y'all get in Lloydminster, but when we are piling on feet and feet and feet of snow, on these very, very small 1910, 1915, 1920 streets, it's pretty worrisome about whether a fire truck could get down there or even an ambulance in some instances. And so we are feeling some urgency to figure out a more robust solution to this than just consistently failing special improvement district votes or waiting and waiting and waiting for us to accrue enough capital to then pay for these roads to be improved, because it's going to be a century from now before we can get there.
Mayor Albers, you're laughing because I can imagine you have a few comments about snow, and your residents of Lloydminster probably also have a few comments about snow as well.
Yeah, Morrison, no, we don't get feet and feet of it. But when it comes, and yeah, it's challenging. And absolutely, residential snow removal versus there's nowhere to plow it, so that is a challenge. And I think there's just perfect examples. When do you fix a water main, and it's old, and you wait till you have 4 or 5 breaks? The local improvement tax, I believe, is what we would call that from that perspective, Mayor Morrison. That's here if people want it, but it hasn't. We haven't used it lately, and I don't even know when it was last used for an improvement. It's usually a tax-based support for the water, sewer, and roads from that perspective. So it is challenging, and there's no simple solution. But I feel for you. I can say that absolutely. I think everybody on this side of the 49th can appreciate that exactly, because we're all facing the same challenge.
I want to talk about something that Mayor Morrison's brought up a few times, and it's the role that the state level of government, or here in Canada, it would be the provincial level of government, plays in the day-to-day operations of the municipality. Now, I'm going to say something that is the most controversial thing I probably can say on this show. In Canada, municipalities are treated like children of the provinces because the provinces have the ability to do whatever they want with municipalities. So, Mayor Morrison, in Montana, do you feel like you are a child of the state, or do you feel like you are an equal partner in the level of government that needs to be there? And I know I'm asking the political question to you, and you're shaking your head already, but I've got to start there.
Yeah, I love the way you phrased it. When you asked child of the state, I was like, no, of course not. And then you said equal partner, and I was like, oh, well, we're not that either. That's for certain. We are somewhere in between, but yes, we are the cities of Montana. They're the big 8 cities, which are the 8 jurisdictions that are basically above 12, 15,000 residents. I would not say we are treated in the way in which our authority should be represented in our state legislature. We consistently have tools taken away from us. We have regulatory options taken off the table. Meanwhile, we're the economic engine of the state of Montana. This is where the tourists go. This is where they spend their time, their money that goes into the state of Montana's coffers. It does not stay in our city coffers. So it goes to the state of Montana. They get to use it however they choose. Jobs are created in cities like Bozeman that fuel the entire state. So these 8 cities, despite us being nearly half the population of the state of Montana, we are not represented in our legislature as if that were the case. And so there has been a real tension of tools and our way of that we want to be able to govern with local control coming under some level of scrutiny, attack, and that's been tough. And it's been a dynamic for a long time in this state.
Can I follow up on that just for a quick second? And I apologize to again ask the second political question on the political show with political mayors, but do you feel like the cities, because and I'm just going to pick on the cities here because you said the 8 cities make up about half of, or just a little bit over half of the population of Montana. Do you feel like municipalities have a strong voice when decisions are being made at the state legislature or in the state senate? Or do you feel like there needs to be a little bit more? Because you're right, population base is where your community is, and that's where most of Montanans live, are in the big cities. So do you feel like when you speak about issues that are important to the city of Bozeman, people in the state capital are listening?
Generally, the advice that we have sometimes heard over the years for the quote unquote blue cities, being largely Bozeman and Missoula, is that it's best when we just don't show up to Helena. That it will be more vindictive. They like to punish these cities, and so we don't show up. I would say the best way that we get our needs met in the legislature is either, we hire a lobbyist that works with other cities to help represent what we need. We have a league, Montana League of Cities and Towns, which you guys have SUMA. It's kind of it's our analog down here, and they do incredible work at representing the needs of cities or of cities and towns, but it's all of us. And the big 8 cities don't have the same needs and pain points that small towns of 500, 600 to 1,000 or even 50 residents have. Those have their place, and they've got their own pains right now. But having us all under one umbrella at times makes it hard to find like clear unity on what exactly our top issue is. But I think we're coming to a better place with our relationship with the state legislature, and I think we have more representatives that understand we're the economic engines of the state. They don't need to kick us in the teeth. They can work with us. So that's exciting. That's been a priority of ours over the last couple of years, but it's a tough spot.
Mayor Albers, for yourself, I know we are just off of the most recent SUMA convention where literally I think almost all the Saskatchewan Party government caucus was at the SUMA convention at one point or time or another. Do you feel like the city of Lloydminster or municipalities, and I know you sit on the board of SUMA, so I'm kind of asking you a three-prong response question here, but do you feel like municipalities have a strong enough voice in provincial decision making?
Certainly, that's a tough one, Chris, because understanding that we each have our own lane to be in. The province has a lane, and the municipalities have a lane, and the federal government has a lane. We could always we ask for more, because the challenge is that in our case 60% of the infrastructure in Canada and in Saskatchewan resides in municipalities. So without water, sewer, and roads, you can't service a post office, a school, a hospital, a nursing home, and all those pieces to it. So there's always that question. The challenge is where do the resources go? And I think it's an ongoing discussion with the province on a regular basis with multiple ministers about how are you addressing the challenges that are in our cities. Now, in our case, we have 16 cities. So they're the 2 largest being Regina and Saskatoon, is certainly where most people end up when they're looking for medical professional help. Our specialists are there. But among the other 14 cities, we're often looked at as regional centers for hospital, for business, and things like that. And that's an ongoing struggle with the provincial government trying to, again, having those resources pulled to the 2 biggest cities, but also to the 14 cities as that regional. But then to our fellow members of SUMA, no town wants to be without having medical care. And some of those hospitals date back to the 1900s, or sorry, to the early 1900s. And people want to ensure that those hospitals are always going to be there. And it's hard to give up a hospital or a medical center, hard to give up a school in a community. So there is a challenge that exists, and there's no simple solution, but we'll continue to carry that message forward. And I know the province is listening. Is the province able to act on it? That's the bigger challenge. That they're facing similar challenges. They're running a deficit where I don't know about Mayor Morrison if your community can run a deficit, but we can't. We are not entitled by provincial law to run a deficit, and if we do, we have to take next year's money to cover this year's deficit at the end of the financial year. So that's a huge challenge, and that's what people don't realize. We often hear the news federally and provincially, and I think it's the same. I don't know about the state, but the federal government in the US is running a deficit, but we just don't have that ability, yet people continue to come to us for those services.
Mayor Morrison, did you want to respond to that? Can the city of Bozeman run a deficit, or are you legally required to run balanced budgets every year?
My understanding of that question is that we do have to create a balanced budget. I think there's been a few instances where cities in Montana have run at a deficit, and it's been a big deal when that has happened. But I mean, if it's meaning, can we take out debt for things like that? And maybe I'm
No, and there are municipalities in Canada that you're allowed to take out debentures to borrow against projects to pay off in 10, 15 years and take out loans to cover costs. But legally, at the end of the year, when you go in and submit your audited forms to the province, and I'm probably going to let Mayor Albers probably explain that probably a little bit better than I'm about to here, because I'm going to give it like the little grade two level education that I have on this budget issue. That when you submit your audited report, the balance sheet has to be zero. It literally, you cannot be in a deficit. So yes, there are debentures, there are loans that you can take out, but at the end of the day, you have to be in a balanced budget and you cannot operate your municipality in a deficit. Correct, Mayor Albers?
Absolutely, Chris. You can either be balanced or you could end with a surplus, which isn't a bad thing as long as it's reasonable and it's justifiable from that
Mm.
perspective. Because in some cases, that's taxpayers' money that hasn't been spent, and we're not a saving institution, but at the same time, we do like to have some surplus or reserves, as I like to refer to it as, to cover it off. But yeah, Mayor Morrison, we can borrow for capital projects. And as Chris outlined, it could be 5, 10, 20, 30 year, intergenerational type projects, such as a recreational or multi-purpose facility, even a wastewater treatment plant or water treatment plant. We can borrow that. Or we can go to a 5 year if it's a small project and we believe we can fit it into 5 years. We have that ability.
So I want to just pick up on one thing that I, it is a passion of mine, and it's the one reason why I started this show, because I believe, and this is my true belief, so do not send your emails to the mayors. Please send them to me, and I will file them in the appropriate location. I believe there's a blurring of jurisdictional lines going on in this country, in Canada, and I would say across North America, of what the responsibility of the municipality is. Now, you are in your communities 24/7. You're not in Helena, you're not in Regina doing your job. You are in your community. You make a decision at council, that decision is going to impact people the next day. From your perspective, and I'll start with Mayor Morrison on this because I kind of know where Mayor Albers is going to go on this answer, so I'm going to ask him a different one. Do you believe the people of your community, the city of Bozeman, understand what role the day-to-day operations of the municipality plays, or are you being asked about state issues, federal issues that you have no legal responsibility to do?
Yes, absolutely. And it's increased as increasingly our federal government is asleep at the wheel in many respects, are gutting essential programs. So it's not necessarily out of just misunderstanding, which of course everybody misunderstands local government. Even those of us in local government misunderstand what our role is sometimes.
Say it ain't so, Mayor. Come on. We understand it, I think. Go
And
ahead.
so it's at times out of desperation, right? It's folks, it's behavioral health challenges, it's substance use and addiction challenges. It's our SNAP welfare program getting cut. It's those types of needs where folks are saying, I trust local government more than state and federal government. And so I'm now going to ask more and more and more of them. And that's certainly what our experience has been, where both our residents are feeling overtaxed, overburdened. They don't want to pay for new things. Meanwhile, are showing up and telling me they need more and more and more things to be paid for. And that tension is being felt throughout Montana for certain, but I'm sure throughout really the West that's seeing this growth and explosion, that we're not equipped right at this moment to be able to address every single one of those pain points that comes with growth with the current financing mechanisms that we have.
Mayor Albers' growth is brings in its own shares of unique challenges as well, and with that, that means the municipality has to look at responsibilities that traditionally are not in their purview. Mayor Morrison just talked about mental health and addiction, and we heard that loud and clear at the SUMA convention, just at the most recent one. Do you believe that people understand that if there is a health issue, they go talk to their local MLA? If there's a federal issue, they go talk to their MP? Or because you're Gerald Albers and you're the mayor of Lloydminster, we're going to just talk to you because, well, you're probably going to be in the grocery store or down at the event more often than their MP or their MLA is?
You hit the answer right there, Chris. As a mayor and councillors that are out each and every day, having their own businesses potentially, or just simply shopping, or at a social event, we're going to hear about it, and we do, and that's the challenge. And people expect the municipality to do something about it, and we try to explain again back to that term I use, staying in our lane, that healthcare and mental health and addiction and social services are not in our lane, but we as a municipality we have no choice but to try and assist where we can, and we've done that, and I know there's other municipalities in Saskatchewan that have done what they can do within reason. But once we start to go down that slippery slope, back to the discussion we had earlier, it's very hard to give that back to the province. They tend to offer it to you and say, well, you started it, you can keep it, and it is very challenging. And it's the challenge that we'll have until the system changes, and what that system change looks like, I'm not sure. But we appreciate what the MLAs and the cabinet ministers do and the federal government. But in the same token, as you said, how often do you get to see your mayor? You can pretty much pop in at any time and run into him or her, and the same with council members. But when the MLAs are sitting in Regina, is the case, you're not going to see them until maybe on the weekend, depending on if they're able to attend a couple public functions. Our MPs are even more challenged because they're making the trip back from Ottawa and flying back on Sunday. It's really challenging, and I think that's the biggest piece. Is we're the first line of defense, yet we're at the bottom, if I can use the term, the bottom of the pole, and we're going to see it all. But we have little impact.
I want to just, the reason I asked that question is because I'm literally about to ask you what you do about the issues that are not in your purview, and that is about economic development. Economic development is not just a municipal issue, it's a state provincial issue, it's a federal issue as well. Mayor Morrison, for yourself, what are the key drivers of your local economy, and how does the city of Bozeman work to strengthen those, knowing that you only play a little small piece in the giant cog that is the economy of your community?
Yeah, this is one I would say we really get to be cheerleaders of good businesses, good causes, good industry. That's the main thing that we get to support these types of efforts. Because at the end of the day, the majority of the workers in our community are in serving in some fashion the tourism industry. So roughly 1 in 4 people that work in our city work in retail, work in food service, et cetera, and the various other services that it takes to make that economy run. The consequence of that is that those are not high paying jobs that are keeping up with the cost of housing. We float around between 600 and 800,000 US dollars for our median home price. And so someone who's a bartender making $45,000-$50,000 a year is virtually never going to afford that product. And so what can we do about that? Well, we can work and support and invest in talent pipelines that help folks move into competitive sectors like traded sectors and local sectors that are paying better wages and things like that. But it always leaves somewhat of a hole. It's a real challenge of tourism economies, is that it sort of always requires some level of the community to be willing to work a job that doesn't pay very well, and that sits uncomfortably for me. But the growing industries in our community is, of course, construction, that's working on building homes in the commercial side of things. But oddly, we've become a bit of a tech hub, and we now have a budding like quantum and photonics, so crystals and lasers, those types of manufacturing and industry that are paying very high wages. And biomedicine is another industry that's been booming in our community. Those are more of the economic vitality side of our econ dev world that we try to support as gently and as effectively as we can, because those are bringing good jobs to the community.
Mayor Albers, for yourself, what is the key economic driver of the city of Lloydminster? And again, how does the city sort of help move the economy forward, knowing that, again, you are one small piece of the big giant puzzle that is the economy of Lloydminster?
Yeah, I guess that I would always say agriculture is our anchor. And depending on what happens in agriculture, if there's enough rain and the rains are timely, we have grass for cattle, great cattle production, we have great grain production. That's the anchor. Energy plays a huge role because of as the price goes up, and we've seen that all of a sudden activity levels increase dramatically. So heavy oil plays an absolutely huge role in our community. But as a regional center, be it shopping, be it retail, be it services, be it healthcare, that's really stepping up. So we've almost got a three-legged chair that drives our economy, as well as we continue to look for diversification options. And economic development is, as Mayor Morrison said, attracting new opportunities, and again playing in the field that we can play in, because we'll never attract the multinationals that we won't have a car assembly plant here. But can we create renewable diesel fuel as an example? From that perspective of the products that we're already processing here, there's a possibility. And I think that's a very close possibility, a reality actually, from that perspective. So you need to play to your strengths. And I think that's happening across Saskatchewan with a multitude of communities, either cities, towns, villages, where somebody says, hey, I think there's an opportunity here. And we're seeing it across Saskatchewan, where manufacturing is springing up in a smaller community because there's local people that are able to be hired from that perspective. But also in the same token, we're seeing multinationals invest across Saskatchewan from the north, be it mining and resources, to the south, and agro processing. So I think that each community has the opportunity. It's just a matter of, hopefully, as we just talked about, housing, water, sewer, roads. Hopefully you've got the schools and the healthcare to support that kind of growth, because that's the challenge that often limits economic development, is all the other pieces. And the trouble is, the municipality has some control, but most of the control lies outside in the province.
I have two questions for each of you left, because I'm very cautious of time here. So hopefully you're okay with just being with me for a little bit longer. And I want to talk, it goes hand in hand about the growth and the challenges that we're seeing. How do you see your municipality adapting to the increasing expectations from residents? 10 years ago, more and more people were not relying so heavily on the municipality for services, for healthcare, for issues around mental health and addiction, for homelessness, for houselessness, for grants. But today, it seems like that has changed. For the city of Lloydminster, Mayor Albers, how has the municipality been able to adapt to the increased expectations from residents and stakeholders within its community?
Well, try to answer to those requests on a regular basis. Some are able to be accomplished and others aren't. I know we need an enlarged swimming pool. Our swimming pool's reached its capacity, but we also had to replace a skating rink that was in terrible shape. So you try to balance, and I think sharing with the community. If you want it, we work with you, but we have to start planning. We have to start fundraising in that perspective, and be prepared in our case that if the government grant programs of a third come back for infrastructure, we're ready, and as they say, shovel ready, or at least project ready for something like that to take advantage of it. And it's challenging because there's going to be continuous demands. Water treatment plants need to be upgraded continuously. Regulations change at a federal level, which drop to the province and then end up in our laps, and then say, oh yeah, by the way, you're not meeting federal regulations. You need to make this a change immediately or as soon as possible, or somebody's going to be fined or go to jail. And no one wants to be in that position. I don't think Mayor Morrison wants to be in that position any more than myself. And that's the challenge that we have right now.
Mayor Morrison, what about yourself? How does the city of Bozeman uh, adapt to the increased pressures that residents are demanding of its municipalities to deliver? And is it hard to say no to people in a position where you live and die by the ballot box?
Yeah, I think one honest answer to that is that we are letting people down. There are definitely critics, detractors in our community, not just of myself or of our city, that really feel that we're failing them. And I think we feel that weight of wanting to, invest in transitional housing infrastructure to get folks from homelessness into permanent housing, which we're investing in, but it's not enough. that are recognizing the challenge in how eviction works in the United States and in Montana, and trying to help and ensure that that process is fair. Well, we're trying to commit to some of that as well, but it's not enough. And so I think I recognize, as someone who was a community organizer that was demanding more of government to now being in government, that it's really tough. It's really tough as we're trying to make an effective surgical use of our scarce resources, that trying to solve every problem, fix the pool as an example, that we also have a pool that we need to be working on. These are tough things for us to drop and say we can't do these. But then if we were to ask the voters and say, would you like to pay for this? It would probably be a no. And that is that's the challenge that the places like Bozeman are in right now, is where we are at the end of the day. We are just going to be letting down some of our residents, and it eats away at many of us. There's not necessarily any magic wand that we can wave to address it differently, but it's a painful part of the job.
So I said there was two questions left, and if you've been on this show before, like Mayor Elbers has, you know that means I have actually three questions left. And this one is a very quick one, because this is the only difference that I can find so far between municipalities. Yes, you have your aging infrastructure challenges. Yes, you have your state provincial challenges. But the one thing I find different in the two municipalities I'm talking to is how you elect your mayor. In the city of Lloydminster, everyone gets a vote and they get to vote for their mayor. But in the city of Bozeman, that's completely different. Mayor Morrison, can you explain to the people of Canada and the rest of America, because it sounds like Bozeman's the only one that does this, how your mayoralship comes about?
Yes, it's my favorite question to answer. I never get it. It never comes up. So in our charter, and this is only in the city of Bozeman, I have not yet encountered another city anywhere in Montana or the United States that does it this way. You elect your mayor for a 4-year term. You fill the bubble that says mayor, but they first serve the first 2 years as deputy mayor. Then they just become the mayor. And so it goes that if you then run again, you go back to 2 years as deputy. So if I run for reelection under this current system, I would go back down to deputy and then back up to mayor again. Just as my deputy mayor was just elected mayor in the fall of 25.
So can I ask the stupid question? I know I said that was my last question, but has this always been this way? Because, like, for me, and I'm assuming Mayor Albers, you're probably going to want to chime in here, but that seems redundant, doesn't it? Like, that seems like it's very convoluted. Is there pros and cons to it that you see? Or is this just and I know it's the worst thing you can say in municipal government, it's the way it's always been, so we haven't changed it?
It's funny you'd ask. It's actually not been around that long. It was first instituted in basically 2006. So in our constitution, Montana's constitution, every 10 years, our voters get to decide whether they want to change the form of government or not, or the structure, make tweaks. And so we're undergoing that right now. But the last time that happened was in 2004 into a 2006 charter that then said, yeah, this is the way we do it. We elect someone that serves 2 years as deputy mayor.
Mayor Albers, do you want to move the city of Lloydminster to that? Because it sounds like it would be a fun model, in my opinion.
Thanks very much, Chris. I think I'll stay with our charter in 4-year terms, and we elect for one mayor and 6 councillors at that time, and go from there, because that it would be challenging in this case, because I don't know how you structure it and what kind of time Mayor Morrison puts in at the office, but I don't know if the deputy mayor would be so excited about moving to that position if they weren't elected to that position right off the bat. Because in my case, it was I went into a full-time mayor's role and left a full-time job outside. I ran for council. Yeah, this is that's unique, very unique.
I want to just end on one question. And we've talked about the challenges, but let's talk about the future. Are you optimistic about the future of Bozeman and Lloydminster, starting with Mayor Albers?
I am, Chris. I think the opportunities, we have so many opportunities, and we'll continue to market ourselves. We have room to grow. We have infrastructure, the base infrastructure, be it water and sewer, landfills, things like that. We just need to bring the province along with us because, of course, there'll always be constraints on schools and hospitals because of our system. But I think there's huge opportunity. The oil and gas industry, everybody needs asphalt, and that's what we produce the best here in the world. We'll keep shipping asphalt as long as we can to everybody that needs it.
Mayor Morrison, for yourself, are you optimistic about the future of the city of Bozeman, looking at, and I'm going to weirdly say this in a weird way, but your second year of your first term as mayor, but third year as being deputy mayor and mayor. So are you optimistic about the future?
To me, being hopeful or optimistic is really it's a practice, and I do think when I'm in my best self, I feel optimistic. And I feel optimistic in large part because the housing crisis that our community has been experiencing, which is the top of mind issue for me most days, is now so deeply felt across the entire community and now more across the state that there's now so many more hands that are on deck right now. And I think that the spirit of collaboration and partnership that I've been working to engender with our community and our partners and our other jurisdictions in throughout the state and throughout our valley, those are the things that make me feel optimistic, is that we're not solving these alone anymore.
Well, Mayor Morrison, Mayor Albers, I want to thank you so much for the bottom of my heart for spending some time with us today. Greatly appreciated. I feel like we've just scratched the surface, and hopefully this is not the last conversation Mayor Morrison and our team will have. And Mayor Albers, I know you and I will probably chat in a few weeks, if not a few months from now. So thank you so much, both gentlemen, for doing this.
Thanks very much, Chris. Thanks very much, Mayor Morrison. A real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Today's episode was brought to you in part by the Johnson Shoyoma Graduate School of Public Policy. Thanks for listening and tuning in for this edition of Municipal Affairs, the show where we take a closer look at the people, the policies, and the practical decisions shaping local governments across Canada. Now, each episode is designed to dig beneath the headlines and bring forward real-world conversations about the challenges and, as you heard today, the opportunities facing municipalities of all sizes. Now, if today's discussion was useful, thought-provoking, we encourage you to subscribe to the show. Leave a review and share this episode with colleagues, counselors, and any municipally minded professional who cares about strong local governance. Visit crossbordernetwork.ca to learn about how you can join an upcoming episode of Municipal Affairs to contribute to the national conversation on local governance. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and thanks again for tuning in to Municipal Affairs. Till next time, everyone.